SuperTalk Mississippi media production.
Thinking about a new vehicle? Trust the team that's been taking care of customers for 70 years. The Cannon family has helped thousands drive home happy. Come take a test drive today and see why. And remember, when the smoke clears, nobody beats a Cannon deal. Nobody.
MidDays with Gerard Gibert is on the air. MidDays with Gerard Gibert is powered by C-Spire. Power your home or business with C-Spire Fiber. To learn more, visit supertalk.fm/C-Spire. C-Spire Fiber powers SuperTalk Mississippi. Get ready to go beyond the headlines and join a meaningful conversation with people from around the state. Hello. You're listening to MidDays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to MidDays, SuperTalk Mississippi. I'm your host, Gerard Gibert, along with Rhino in the Element Wealth Studio, guiding you through the middle of your day with facts, fodder, and fine music on this Friday Eve. Yeah, man, we are here. We have made it through what has been a relatively busy week here in the middle of the summer. It's been a good one. A little hot out there, but again, it is summer, so we should expect that. Lots of stuff going on in the Magnolia State and, of course, across these United States of America as well. We, of course, are in the Element Wealth Studio. Go to myelementwealth.com or call 601-957-6006 to let Element Wealth help you find your balance between income, growth, and guarantees. We've got John McKay. He is the president and CEO of the Mississippi Business Alliance in the Element Wealth Studio at 10:20 in the next segment. Josh Maples, agricultural economist with the Mississippi State University Extension Service, will call in at 12:05. I'm going to talk about the screwworm. That little pest is wreaking havoc across the country, and we wanted to talk to Josh about what the impact is to Mississippi's agricultural community. So, looking forward to those discussions. Got to kind of start out, Rhino. I attended, as I do most years, so starting about 5 years ago. I think I've attended 4 of the last 5 years. The United Pentecostal Church's annual camp meeting, which is held at their campus, their facility in Raymond out on Highway 18. And it's always excellent. And it's so inspiring, so uplifting, so positive, so energetic, so vibrant. I was just thinking this morning about words I could use to describe it. And honestly, if you try to describe, okay, what happens, I don't think you could. It's really difficult. It's unique. But those are the words I would use to describe it. And one thing that I'll always note is that, of course, they're really good about hosting guests, special guests, as they refer to them. Those are folks that aren't regular members of the congregation in their various churches across the state. But, man, they're so welcoming and so kind, so gracious, so hospitable to their guests. It's just absolutely incredible. So always good to interact with the good folks of the United Pentecostal Church in the great state of Mississippi. Of course, Governor Tate Reeves, he spoke last night. That is typical. That's the custom on the opening night of the event, the worship service, and the various preaching and speaking that occurs Wednesday, Thursday, Friday during camp meeting week. Governor Tate Reeves, I saw numerous other members of Our legislature, as well as some statewide elected officials, also on hand. Treasurer David McKay, also Attorney General Lynn Fitch in attendance. I suspect the other statewide leaders will attend it either tonight or Friday as well. But great job. Shout out to them. Thanks so much for having me. And always enjoyable, always inspiring, always uplifting. They're just so positive. We deal with so much negative, and certainly you and I guess, in our line of work, we see a lot of that. We don't take enough time, do we, to highlight the positives, the good things that happen. We're so hyper-focused on all the negative stuff, and we tend to get wrapped up in trying to find the next gotcha, for those with whom we disagree. We don't take enough time. And the other thing I'll just say about that event last night and about that church in general, what an excellent job they do of including their young people who are always present, participating, engaged. It's just so good to see that, because they're being raised while being exposed to the Holy Word in a positive, godly Christian message. That is so critical and so important to developing what will be successful, godly adults. That's where it starts, and they do such an excellent job of that, and it's so gratifying and just so rewarding to see the young people participate the way they do and the way they turn out. I also happen to think it's cool to see little guys. They come up to my knees, right, all dressed up in suits. I just think that's cool, and teaching them pride in your look. There's something to be said for that, is there not, Rhino? You and I certainly come across lots of people that seem to take pride in contorting and distorting their physical appearance. It's like some sort of statement.
I'm always going to fall on the side of comfort over fashion or style.
Sure.
But yeah, there's a stark difference, and I found out a long time ago I'm comfortable in polo shirts.
Yeah.
With an undershirt. I don't consider that a style. It's just comfortable. And it's not a whole lot you got to think about when you're getting ready for work.
Yeah.
There's a difference between that and, well, I'm just going to wear pajamas 24/7.
Which
I appreciate comfort, but I was raised by a mama that would have whooped me if she'd have caught me out in public in PJs 24/7.
Well, certainly when you go to worship, though, right? You need to have some degree of respectable attire. I would say, to me, it's even more appropriate when it's at night and when it's a big assembly like that. You've got all the dignitaries coming in, and I don't know. I just think it makes sense to put your best look forward. And
on the flip side of that, especially when it comes to worship services, I am of the opinion that someone's attire should not stop them from coming to know God.
Agree. Good point. Absolutely, 100%. And I think these folks would tell you that, right? Any welcoming worship faith organization should, of course, welcome those who may feel like, I can't go because I don't have the proper. No, please come. It's more important that you're here and that you're participating, right? And that you're hearing the message and the word in a way that hopefully impacts you in a positive way. And that was brought up last night as part of the preaching, that we all know that folks are dealing with a myriad of challenges and struggles in their life. So let's pray for them and let's welcome them. Let's do what we can to help them. So shout out to them. Really appreciate that. Ron Mattis, he is someone I've gotten to know pretty well over the years. He serves as kind of a liaison between the church and elected officials. In fact, Congressman Michael Guest was there as well, and his wife Haley Of course, I mentioned that because we interviewed him yesterday. But shout out to the United Pentecostal Church, the Mississippi District, another outstanding camp meeting at their facility down in Raymond, Mississippi. We got lots of news going on. Again, as we said, across the country, fresh set of attacks, right, Rhino, between this country and Iran. The president, you can tell, is super frustrated with them. The United States hit 90 Iran targets. That's over the last 2 nights. And Iran, is my understanding this morning, Rhino, is actually attacking U.S. facilities.
From what I understand, the 90 was just last night.
Okay. Well,
that was in addition to the 80 the night before. Okay,
that's right. Now they changed the chyron. It now says in the second night. And earlier it said over 2 nights. So I think they must have been updated on the information as you just did for that. So 90 last night. That's incredible. So I believe that they did attack some of our installations in the Emirates, right? And somewhere else over there as well, another friendly country.
Kuwait, Bahrain, and Qatar were the 3 I saw.
Well, that's just dumb to attack U.S. facilities. You're asking for it, you idiots. All right, we're going to take a break right now. When we come back, it's John McKay with the Mississippi Business Alliance.
Middays with Gerard.
Good for America. Good for fans of justice and truth. Good for us.
SuperTalk Mississippi.
This is what we stand for.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Wealth Studio. It's our pleasure to welcome now John McKay, President and CEO of the Mississippi Business Alliance. John, always good to see you. Thanks for coming in.
Great to be back. Thanks, Gerard.
So tell the folks about this legislative report card that you guys have been publishing. Well, now that all 3 organizations together, it's come under your wings here. So.
Well, and that's probably a good place to start is to kind of go back and remind everybody of kind of how we got here.
Yeah.
And it's actually in the report, the first page is kind of a debrief on the organizations that ultimately decided to join forces and merge, which was official at the beginning of the year.
Yeah.
So, MMA that I used to run and MEC, the state chamber, and then BIPEC all joined forces and came under one roof. And really, we became that central voice for business in the state of Mississippi. We are recognized as the state chamber and the affiliate of the National Association of Manufacturers from Mississippi. And, one of the aspects of that is we were able to do all of the things that our legacy organizations did and hopefully do it better. So, if you're familiar with BIPEC, they were a longstanding organization that published a legislative report card.
Right.
And so we were definitely interested in keeping that tradition alive. And one of the things that we've sort of the ethic that we've kept in place is we want to do those things, but we want to change them up and do them a little differently, maybe a little bit better, add some context, that sort of thing. So that's the product you see that we just released this week is the legislative report. And
right.
So while it does include a report card, I really hope people don't just jump to the scorecard and really read the report, because I think it offers a lot of context in our perspective on the legislative session and the process. Because, as you know, the legislators come in for 3 months every year, and it is just chaos. I mean, there are bills all over the place. There's issues everywhere. And I think what happens is when you get done with a session, people just sort of move on and sort of forget about it. So this is a tool that we hope our members can use to help them evaluate the relative success of a session or the folks that represent their district, their company, whatever. So that's what we put out this week, and it really goes through. I mean, obviously in our umbrella, we have every sector of business and industry in the state. So we wanted to make sure that we looked at, and there's a long process. A lot of folks are together in this to look at specific legislation, to look at the process, to look at the ability of individual legislators to move the needle for us on our key issues. Yeah.
Well, you guys, what are you looking for, I guess, is the question I'm searching for. What, from your perspective, and of course the report card is oriented more towards whom you serve. As you said, that's every business in the state.
That's right. And I think that's what we wanted to capture is what is most important to help those folks in Mississippi. What are those issues that promote economic growth, that lower the burdens, whether that's regulatory or taxation, what are those issues that really key in on those cost drivers that would make us non-competitive, whether it's to our neighbors or to regionally or internationally. I mean, it's all of those factors we try to look at. What will help Mississippi businesses sustain, grow, create new businesses, help with economic development. All of those things are so critical because, I mean, you see the trend right now. Economic development is really on a pretty strong path.
Right.
And, you know, credit to Governor Reeves and legislative leaders that have really put some policies in place to help drive that. But we absolutely need some form of accountability to make sure that we don't do any backsliding on some of those issues.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. And I know that your organization is active within the legislature, if for no other reason, just to inform. They need to know, okay, what kind of policies are needed to promote economic growth, to take the burden off of businesses that in a way that encourages business investment and expansion.
Well, and I think that's a key point. I mean, and I tell people this all the time, you know, lobbying and lobbyists get a bad rap, and I understand that. It's sort of like lawyers. But our main purpose in the system is really education. And I really hope that folks don't just jump to conclusions based on a single data point or a single report, for that matter.
Okay.
The folks, our job is to go in and educate, and we try our best to get a hold of every legislator on every issue, but obviously that's probably impossible. So another way that we can use this as a tool is to further inform. I mean, look, we're going into an election cycle next year, and this is our first year in existence as the unified voice, and we want to kind of put a marker out there so that legislators, you know, when we roll into the 27 session and they've got elections coming up, they can, you know, come to us and we can come to them and say, these are the broad policy spaces that are really impactful. And if we can work together to move the needle, I think that it's going to move us all in the right direction, because every legislator, no matter what party or anything like that, they really do want to grow their communities and their economies, but some of them are just misguided in some of their policy outlook. And that's really our job.
Yeah.
And hopefully we can do that with a tool like this and other things that we do.
So I'm looking at the report. It's excellent. It's easy to consume. I will say that. It makes the point. So good job on that for sure. We talked to Leah Long a lot on this program.
Yep.
You know who she is.
Yep.
She's the director for NFIB for Mississippi. And she has her pulse on, of course, with her members, especially within the small business community, what their challenges and issues are. And they pretty much align with what you're reporting here. Let's talk about a couple of those.
Sure.
The cost of health care and health insurance is, you know, that has been something that I've told people in the past that in my 33-year business career, I can't remember a year where they ever went down. I don't remember a broker calling me saying, "Hey, Gerard, I want to come take you," or my agent, you know, to lunch. You always know, oh yeah, this is that lunch where they're going to tell me that my premiums are going up.
That's right.
So I can't remember a year where that happened.
Well, and that's such an active space, and you're absolutely right. Unfortunately, health insurance cost drivers, they just are continually going up. And there's a lot of factors in that. One of those factors is the policies. Things that we do at the federal level and the state level. Unfortunately, things in Washington are just kind of broken. There's just a lot of stuck in the mud. Not a lot of stuff getting done on the policy front.
Right.
So a lot of that's trickled down to the states. And so when you look at health drivers, so obviously the PBM legislation was a big area. I mean, you covered it on your show countless times from all angles, which I certainly appreciate. And it's a very confusing issue. When you get into health insurance, health policy, all these things, there's so many factors that are at play that the average voter, it's very difficult for them to understand. So whether you're talking about that issue on the pharmaceutical side or mandates that insurance companies cover certain things, or the ability for insurance companies to develop and build out their networks and not have the state say, well, you can't do that, or you have to do this, you have to work with these people. Those are things that, in a vacuum, you look at a piece of legislation and you might say there's nothing wrong with this. But there are so many implications downstream. That's another area that we really need to just get some attention that says, hey, if you make this one little change, it has a ripple effect far beyond this one little area.
Yeah. So I don't know that where there's any relief coming. It's such a complex, as you know, subject with a million moving parts in it. It's a very convoluted and not well understood ecosystem. Yeah. I was talking to a physician about this over the weekend. That they all complain, and understandably so. Mm-hmm. But so do the patients, right. And so do the insurance companies. Like who's happy with the current system? Yeah, no, you're exactly right. And the businesses, of course. Well, so. and it's sort of everybody's pushing everybody else to the front of the line to take the arrows, and that's unfortunate. But it's just sort of the way that it works these days, and it is frustrating. And one of the things that I want to see happen is for it not to get so expensive that businesses start opting out of offering. And then we're in a whole different ball game than we are right now. So we really need to stay focused on that issue. Then you would throw people on their own in the individual market, which is even more difficult to get in and more expensive. You're seeing a lot of trouble in that market space right now. Big time. Yeah, it's difficult. And that's, again, we want to be a resource and a voice that says, hey, let's all come together and find a solution. You good to stay around? Absolutely. All right. We got John McKay, President and CEO of the Mississippi Business Alliance in the Element Wealth studio, coming right back.
From thecbro.com.
Gerard Gibert. He keeps his classified documents right where they belong. Inside a Journey record jacket from the 1980s. Gerard Gibert. SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Welcome back, my friends, to the show that never ends. We're so glad you could attend. Come inside, come inside. There behind the glass stands a real blade of grass. Be careful as you pass. Move along, move along. Come inside, the show's about to start. Guaranteed to blow your head apart. Rest assured, don't get your money's worth. Ladies show, it happened.
We're back with you in the Element Wealth studio. We're having a conversation with John McKay. He's President and CEO of the Mississippi Business Alliance. So, John, just looking further at this report, I just want to tell the folks that it really is excellent. The format, the layout, great job you guys did on that. Appreciate it. If you're interested in it, you can find it on you guys' website. MSBA.com. Yep, it's right there. So I'm looking at the page, which I think is really well done here. The cost stack on Main Street. Yeah. And right in the middle is the old scale. Yep. And on one side, you got all the costs that businesses are dealing with: health premiums, property insurance, lawsuit risk, regulations, fees and licenses, infrastructure delays. And then on the other side, you got the workforce. And all these costs are dramatically outweighing the work. It is true, though. It's a problem. Is. And that's really, and we included that infographic for that very reason, is just, again,
to draw people's attention to all of these disparate policy discussions in different areas. And again, legislators can't – there's no way you can walk into that Capitol as a legislator and know all these issues. And that's where we should come in and inform, and then looking at all those things and trying to understand the uphill climb it is to start a business and grow a business with all of those costs that, as you well know, gradually increase every year.
Oh,
and
exactly.
They never slow down.
They don't go down.
And so all of these little policy considerations can end up incrementally stacking on top of each other, and it really does cause some harm. So,
it does. It absolutely does. So, but let's highlight the good stuff about
absolutely.
doing business in Mississippi.
Yes.
We do have a favorable environment from taxes and regulations relative to many other states, including the neighboring states. And we talk about this all the time. People, of course, understandably so, they grouse about some taxes they don't want, property taxes, and that's an issue for businesses as well.
It is.
But we have very low income taxes, and the income taxes are being phased out. Most businesses in our state, as I think you well know, are pass-through type entities, so they're not subject to the C Corp tax. They pay individual taxes. The One Big Beautiful Bill Act continued and renewed the pass-through deduction and actually increased it by 3%. So all that's good news. So Mississippi, from a tax perspective, is not an expensive place to set up shop. It's a good place to do business.
No, I would absolutely agree. And so on the tax front, I think we're very competitive. You know, groups like the Tax Foundation issue reports annually that kind of rank us, and we're usually in that low teens area for taxes, which is a great spot. I mean, you know, every incremental shift down on that list we can get is great. And so we've done a lot of work in that space over the years, whether you're talking about franchise tax, inventory tax, income tax, all of those things. I think policymakers deserve a lot of credit for going down that road. Our regulatory environment, you know, from your work in Madison County, having, for instance, like a DEQ that is much more willing to work with economic development projects and folks that are looking to expand. I mean, that is very unique when you look at other states where you really have an adversarial relationship there. And again, it's all speed to market. We're trying to get businesses in the position to be able to turn a profit so we can hire more people, we can develop communities, all those things. So I think that's really exciting. And look, the workforce development space is something that I'm very excited about what we're doing there. I mean, some of the legislation we passed this year really moves in that direction, whether you're talking about the formation of the Office of Apprenticeships, the upskill program, the Post-Secondary Attainment Council, child care tax credits that we are hopeful that the changes we made there will allow companies that do have single parents. That it's a challenge for them to find child care. I meet with companies all the time, and that is always an issue. You know, summertime, what do you do with the kids? To have an ability for a company to help subsidize those costs. I mean, all of those things really do add up to movement in the right direction. And that's what I really hope to see continue and really push this ethic of workforce development down in the system. So we can't wait until people graduate high school for them to find a pathway. And that's a big focus now with Accelerate Mississippi and Dr. Taylor. I know I work with the governor's office all the time about ways we can work with the federal administration. I mean, there's a lot of changes at the Department of Education to push a lot of those programs. And what we need to do is capture that imagination of the young people and show them a better way. You know, college is great, but it's not necessarily for everyone. Sure. What are some career pathways that can result in tangible benefit, real wages, a good career path with stair-step acceleration in their careers? That is something that I just find it very exciting. Unfortunately, it's not one of those issues that you pass one bill and it's solved.
That's true.
It'll never be solved.
It's continuous.
But our work at the state level, I mean, I have to give a lot of credit to a lot of people that are involved in the space. We've really rolled up our sleeves and we're tackling some of these issues.
I think it's being recognized. That's why we're seeing the infusion of dollars in new economic development projects. That's a huge factor in that.
Absolutely. And you know, a big driver of economic development right now is this AI infrastructure, which I consider really akin to the interstate highway system, 60, 70 years ago. I mean, this is a critical infrastructure that will be built somewhere. I would love for it to be built in Mississippi, and certainly don't want it to be built in China. So what we don't want to do, and again, I think it's incumbent on groups like mine to get the correct information out there about what this infrastructure really looks like and the downstream impacts. I mean, you have companies across the state that have benefited so greatly, whether it's construction, service companies, go down the list of, I mean, look at the Madison County Board meeting recently, the amount of money to local communities where these projects are impacting. It's really exciting, and I think what we really want to make sure we do is we don't want to take our foot off the gas. We absolutely want to be mindful of the impacts, and I think the utility companies have really done a great job of asking these companies to foot the bill for a lot of the infrastructure work so it doesn't impact ratepayers. The environmental impacts, I mean, the technology is evolving so quickly that a lot of the impacts are minimal compared to, I mean, look at golf courses, for instance, and water use. I mean, some of these issues that you see bubbling up are just not rooted in fact. And what I want to see prevented is what you see in some local governments, even some in this state, that are talking about moratoriums and all these things. Look, we can do this responsibly, and we can grow our economy and really put people to work in very high-quality jobs.
100%. That's absolutely totally true. And there's so much, as you know, so much hyperbole and misinformation is floating around, and it gets a life of its own.
It does.
As you know, and elected leaders, especially at the local level, they get nervous about that. But what's a moratorium going to do?
Right.
I mean, what are you going to do? Go study it more?
It doesn't make much sense, especially when you can see a pathway to doing it very responsibly, and the outcomes benefit so many people, whether you're talking about local infrastructure, your local school system, jobs in the communities. I mean, and again, this isn't just isolated to AI infrastructure and all the technology that goes along with that. There's going to be ancillary jobs that come along with that. There's going to be all sorts of things that we can't even contemplate right now.
No doubt.
And to put roadblocks in place, I think it would be a disservice to the state.
We have a fairly streamlined permitting process in the state of Mississippi, as you know, and that is one of the reasons that these companies are seeking to locate in the state of Mississippi.
Absolutely.
We do good there.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
We occupational licensing.
Yes.
We require too many, don't we?
That falls in the big bucket of just kind of regulatory overreach.
Yeah.
And some of it is rooted in a kind of health and safety aspect, which I understand and I appreciate.
Yeah.
But we absolutely need to balance that with the ability to create jobs for people that there's a pathway for them, and they have the skills, they have the ability, and they have the entrepreneurial spirit to go out and do it. Why should the state say no? I think you're seeing some great work from Secretary Watson in this space with his Tackle the Tape initiative, where he's able to identify some of these regulatory burdens and some of these occupational licenses, quite frankly, that have been on the books for 50 years, and nobody's ever looked at it. Nobody's ever said, well, why do we really need that?
Yeah. We need the legislature to act on some of that, though, don't we?
I think we do, and there's been attempts, and again, it's one of those things where sometimes it dies under its own weight because it's got so many pieces and parts moving at the same time.
Yeah.
But I absolutely think that that's a ripe area for us to tackle.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
Appreciate you coming in, John.
Absolutely.
Enjoyed the conversation.
Great talking to you.
John McKay, President and CEO of the Mississippi Business Alliance, has been our guest. We're coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.
You are?
We interrupt this program.
Gerard Gibert.
Here we go.
This is huge news. Huge news. Huge.
You need to listen to this.
MidDays with Gerard. SuperTalk, Mississippi.
The great Steve Miller Band there bumping us into this segment. Thanks so much for joining us here on Middays. We appreciate our conversation with John McKay, President and CEO of the Mississippi Business Alliance, looking out for the best interests of businesses in the state of Mississippi. And that's certainly appreciated. This is a good place to launch a business, to expand a business, to launch a career. We got a lot of good stuff going on. We tend to, again, dwell on the negatives and the challenges, and we certainly need to address those and need to keep those active and work together to solve those issues, resolve those issues. But glad to hear that his organization, Rhino, as you would expect, is pro the expansion of data centers and the location of data centers here in the state of Mississippi. So much misinformation. I mean, the latest reports I'm reading from a couple of people that are opposed to these developments, these projects, you would think every human disease emanates from data centers. I've never seen so much attributed to like a building full of computers. Where do they get this from? It's like following is a list of all the human diseases that don't occur because of data centers. According to them, there's like none on that list. They all come from that.
Well, the problem is that the vast majority of people vehemently against data centers are the same kind of people that would sign a petition to end the distribution of dihydrogen monoxide because dihydrogen monoxide is present in 99.9% of cancers. And at certain levels, dihydrogen monoxide is toxic.
And so they're signing petitions?
The joke is dihydrogen monoxide is a fancy way of saying water.
Oh, okay. No, I believe it. So I can tell you that in Madison, I found out this morning, we did have a concerned person, and I don't want to dismiss anybody's concerns. I want to be clear about that. But, gosh, we do have to frame this issue with facts, not internet hyperbole, especially that which is being driven by this country's adversaries. We're finding out more and more about that. But we had one that wanted to call and express concerns about the use of water. And when it was explained that this is wastewater and the amount of water being used now, Amazon tells us 6 to 8 weeks a year, maybe they'll employ the use of water in the cooling process. And that amounts to a fraction, a minute fraction of the water used in the state. When they find that out, it's like their attitude changes totally. There's this perception out there that they're just sucking the aquifers dry of fresh water. That's just false. It's not true whatsoever. And I've explained it before, but now the data indicates the Nissan factory consumes way more water than the Amazon campuses will. And originally, when it was built, I went back and looked at the original engineering documents concerning the water necessary for the Nissan plant for cooling and also in the paint process. They estimated 4 million gallons a day. And now it's it's turned out that through efficiencies and improvements in just the use of water in the factory, it's $1 million. Well, you can do the math there. That's $300 million a year, roughly. Well, the Amazon expectation is about 200. So that's for both campuses, by the way, in Madison County. So why hasn't anybody complained about Nissan's use of water to build cars? By the way, that's fresh water that's being used. And Amazon's is wastewater. I just don't think that those facts are widely known. In this country, we use about 110 trillion gallons of water a year. Data centers account for 17.5 billion. That's 0.01% of the total water used. It's teeny tiny. But I don't think people realize that. Because they don't want to deal with big numbers. You talk about that all the time. It kind of just goes over their head, and they don't want to discuss it and really think through what a billion means and what a trillion means. We're going to take a break right now. Fox News, SuperTalk News coming up. Coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.
Of MidDays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by the Mississippi Business Journal. Visit msbusinessjournal.com. Scott Coopwood, publisher and president.
Get ready to go beyond the headlines and join a meaningful conversation with people from around the state. You're listening to MidDays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's hour 2 of MidDays, live from the Element Wealth studio on this
Friday Eve.
All right, looks like the post office is going to raise the price of stamps, going up to 82 cents on Sunday. They're still bleeding money, still losing a bunch of money. 82 cents. Man, incredible. All right, what happened to Graham Plattner? He finally called it quits.
I guess somebody finally wrote a check big enough for him to swallow his pride.
That's probably what happened. So there's a bit of a scramble among Democrats for who's going to be the replacement nominee at this point. Not really clear, but there are a bunch of them who are jockeying for that position, wanting to be the nominee. Now, he's been a bit mum. He originally insisted that the only way he would drop out is if he picked his successor. But I guess he gave up.
Which was basically his public-facing way of saying, I'm not going quietly.
Yeah. It looks like the Democrats in the state of Maine, however, plan on holding a nominating convention is the latest. That's after more than 48 hours, Plattner said he got pressure from fellow Democrats to back out, to suspend his campaign. And so he finally did so. I think the old straw that broke the camel's back, as the saying goes, was when he was accused of rape by a former girlfriend. That is an allegation that he denies.
Let's be honest here. The only reason he was pressured to drop out at this point in the race is because he's behind in the polls.
I think that's right.
They just finally found a good enough excuse to use as leverage. He's had plenty on his plate since he even decided to run that would have been disqualifying enough to a sane party. But the Democrat Party is not sane. It's filled with literally insane people.
To your point, just a brief recap of some of the scandals attached to Mr. Plattner. A Nazi tattoo. Lied repeatedly about the Nazi tattoo, though there are millions of photos or shares of him, the photos of him sporting this tattoo, right? And they're not.
It's not just the fact that he's sporting the tattoo, it's that he denied knowing it was a Nazi tattoo, even though he got it while in Europe and had to travel to the singular country in Europe that legally allows Nazi tattoos.
I didn't know that. Oh, my gosh. Well, he said he would rape people. He sexted with women while married, bragged about drawing penises in porta potties. I know I went over this the other day. We had somebody on the C Spire text line said that wasn't a big deal. Yeah, okay, I get it. A lot of people do that as a prank for fun and so forth. I think bragging about it, though, when you're a United States Senate candidate, if that's in your past and you go out and you want to tell the world that you did that, something's weird about you, I would say. He has been known to praise Islamic terrorists. He has indicated his support for communism, called himself in the past a communist. He joined an app known to be used by predators to contact minors. Didn't know there was such a thing. Can't imagine why Apple or Alphabet allow such a tool, if that's what it is. If it's an app that's being used on smartphones, that's crazy, in my view.
That description fits Snapchat, the Kick platform, Roblox.
That's true. I guess you're right. So it may not be just expressly, narrowly for that purpose, just other more widely used, commonly used for a myriad of purposes are being used for that one. Okay. And then, of course, he's got numerous sexual assault allegations. The Democrats were okay with this, to your point. They were okay with this.
They defended him.
Absolutely defend him. It's
until
incredible.
It was no longer politically palatable.
I think Liz Warren said he's the right man for the job or something stupid like that. Incredible. So, again, there are a lot of folks that are raising their hand. Of course they want to be the nominee to serve in the United States Senate representing the great state of Maine.
They don't have to campaign. The Democrats are just going to pick somebody again.
So it looks like, however, yesterday members of the Maine Democratic Party voted to hold a nominating convention later this month. It is expected that hundreds, that's what's being reported, of Maine Democrats will vote to choose a new nominee. Now, I know on the Republican side, it's Senator Susan Collins, who could easily be described as a squishy Republican. But I would also point out she is a Republican representing a state where she's probably the best we could hope for. I would also point out her track record of voting is very much aligned with the president. She did certainly cause some problems, as you recall, during the, I can't remember which of the justices' hearings, where she was a holdout. You remember that? I don't remember if it was Gorsuch or Kavanaugh. It was Kavanaugh. You talked about that before. But she ultimately...
she was naive or stupid enough to buy that a woman who didn't say anything for 30 years and can't be proved that ever met the man somehow went to parties where there were rapes going on multiple times.
She bought into it. That's right. But she ultimately...
Anybody that bought 1 second of Christine Blasey Ford's asinine bloviating was obviously idiotic.
It took about, 5 seconds to realize she was a lying idiot at the end of the day. That was seeking attention, of course. That's all she was doing.
But it's the typical Democrat playbook when it comes to anything, any nomination in the Senate. They really want to put their foot down and stop. They're going to find somebody to come out with false allegations.
And that's what happened. And Susan Collins, unfortunately, bought it hook, line, and sinker. She ultimately, I have to give her credit, she did acquiesce. And I will tell you that whoever wrote her speech, I remember listening to it live when she did speak in the chamber and announced that she was going to support the nomination, I will give her credit. Her speech was actually pretty good. And she did a bit of a mea culpa and said she came to her senses. I'm paraphrasing, but in general, that's what she said. And she mentioned that she after thinking about it more, found the testimony to be a bit in question at a minimum. So I'll give her credit. But you have to admit, she's a whole hell of a lot better than this Plattner nut, even with all her warts and flaws.
A dog turd that's been sitting in the sun and turned white is better than Plattner.
Well, man, he's gone. So you wonder, well, the fact that they nominated this guy, that the Democrat Party saw fit to vote for him as their candidate for the United States Senate, will this affect them in the midterms? You would hope that it would. As you like to point out, don't these people realize just how stupid they are and how crazy it is that they seem to be more infatuated with, obsessed with, leaning into these just crazy people? Where's the sanity in the party? It seems to have left the room and left a vacuum, as a matter of fact. Well, that's where we are. Here at home, this story is one that caught my attention, and you can find it at supertalk.fm, article by Caleb Sailors, multimedia journalist with SuperTalk Mississippi News, entitled, Hoseman Says Mississippi Shouldn't Roll the Dice on Mobile Sports Betting. And so the lieutenant governor, of course, in his second term, has indicated on his social media platform, this just a couple of days ago, that he is opposed to the concept of Mississippians placing wages from their personal devices outside of the four walls of a casino. You know, you can do that now. It's geo-fenced. You can place sports bets on your mobile device as long as you're on the casino property, a casino property. But you can't do that outside of that geofencing, of course. It's protected electronically. He says that it ups the odds of addiction. This is from the article penned by Caleb, of addiction and suicide while harming the state's existing gaming industry. Quote, mobile sports betting wouldn't create a single job for Mississippians and comes with a social cost that is of increasing concern. The Senate should continue to reject this harmful legislation. Coming right back.
I'm Lauren McGraw.
Okay, is everybody ready?
I'm ready.
Ready here.
Middays with Gerard Gibert on SuperTalk Mississippi.
When I think back on all the crap I learned in high school, it's a wonder I can think at all. And my lack of education hasn't hurt me none. I can read the writing on the wall. Vodafone, they give us the nice bright colors, give us the green summers, makes you think all.
Well, I see our Trump derangement syndrome friend is back. I say the word friend with tongue in cheek. So I've come up with an idea. You gave it to me. I think we need to create two text lines. Let's have the normal text line, and then let's create an idiot line while we're at it. Will you just parse those out? Oh, my gosh. Incredible. For someone to equate Donald Trump to Plattner is just unbelievable. And still waiting
Especially with the excuse of using Epstein.
I know. That's what I was going to say.
It's come out that Trump was calling the Palm Beach police on Epstein long before he ever became infamous.
I agree.
But you can't ever convince somebody suffering from Trump derangement syndrome that they're actually a willful idiot.
Unbelievable. On the C Spire text line, we were talking about the increase in the price of a forever stamp scheduled for later on this month. 82 cents now. 82. That's real money. And on the C Spire text line, Louis from the 662, USPS, the United States Postal Service, needs to be privatized. That's been talked about a lot, no doubt about it. One of the big problems for the post office is it's what is a huge financial issue in the federal government and at the state level. It's the retirement systems. Same deal. The retirement system in the post office is breaking it. It's another example of a defined benefit program that's gone awry, just does not work. And that's exactly what's going on with Social Security. I know it's widely believed that Social Security is in the financial dire straits that it currently is, approaching insolvency in 2032 because Congress stole the money. It simply is false, not true, not one dime ever. In fact, if Social Security didn't loan money to the Treasury, it would be in worse shape. It would already be insolvent. That's the truth, because that's the only investment option available to it by law. It has to loan what money it has to the federal government, which pays interest. And when those bonds term out, the federal government, or I should say Social Security, redeems them from the federal government. Every single dime. Right now, the federal government owns about $2.3 trillion of bonds. Or actually, Social Security owns the bonds. The federal government owes it to Social Security. But it has a $30 trillion unfunded liability. And that is more a function of poor design from the get-go and the expectation, as it was in 1935, that we would always have far more people working, paying in, than we do people drawing out. And that dynamic has changed dramatically through the years as our population lives longer, is aging, and we have fewer people being born, fewer people entering the workforce, and thus the ratio of workers to beneficiaries has reached a point where the finances don't work. We're at about 2.5 to 1. In the 60s, it was nearly 6 to 1. And even before the 60s, we had periods where it was 30 to 1. And one of the reasons is because not many people lived to even draw benefits out. It was insurance is what it was, how it was designed against poverty in the event the outside really outsized chance that you might live to that age. So that program is a problem, but it's a problem in the United States Postal Service. That's what we were talking about earlier. I think it lost $8 trillion. Did I get that right? Last year, not $8 trillion. That number's sticking with me, but the losses in the United States Postal Service were astronomical.
Net loss of $9 billion.
Billion, yes, billion. I don't know why I said trillion. I got trillion on the mind from talking about the federal treasury. But a generally accepted accounting principles, that's known as GAAP, GAAP, $9 billion is what I'm looking at for 25. That's incredible. Now, there's been a drop in the volume of mail. We just don't use mail that much anymore. That stands to reason, given the fact that we have evolved more into an electronic communication society. That's a good thing. But their model is built around a certain volume of mail. if you scrapped it and started over, you probably could build a viable model, as is suggested here by Louis, if you just went privatized. But you still have this albatross liability of pensions hanging over your head. So, man, operating expenses, I'm looking at it right now, at the report from the post office, $89.8 billion, largely due to compensation and early retirement incentives, where operating revenue is $80 billion. So it's a big old problem. Now we got 82-cent stamps coming out. Man, oh man, Jerry in Pontotoc says, why don't they just run Kamala for the seat in Maine, I guess he's talking about. Yeah, I think she'd have to be a resident of Maine, Jerry, to do that. But, yeah, she would be a viable candidate, honestly, in the state of Maine. Somebody that's not just nutcase crazy like Plattner could, in fact, give Susan Collins a run for her money. I think that's over now. I really do. I think Susan Collins' seat is safe as a Republican in the United States Senate representing the state of Maine. Let's see, the other senator from Maine, it's Angus King, I believe, right, Rhino? And he's an independent who caucuses with the Democrats. And he's still there? He hasn't stepped down yet, or has he? I can't remember. Man, he's been there forever, if that's the case. Senator
He's still there.
Still there, yeah. An independent, right? But caucuses with the Democrats. So you might as well call him a Democrat. I've never seen him vote, I should say, with Republicans. Let's see. There are major predatory online attacks on L11 students on phones, schools-owned devices, and personal devices. I work every day to alert about these dangers. That's Tim in Oxford. Appreciate that, Tim. Yeah, I'm certainly well aware of the power of the Internet and smartphones and social media with respect to sexual predators. There's no doubt, and there's been lots of work done by our legislature, by our Attorney General, and at the federal level as well, and across the national landscape to rein that in, to hold those people accountable, and social media companies as well. You've probably seen the gigantic lawsuit or series of lawsuits, collection of lawsuits against Meta, like more than the company's worth, $1.7 trillion, I think, all because of that. You know, some of that I agree. They certainly need to be have more controls in place. But on the other hand, like, where are the parents as well, right? Isn't that an issue? Aren't you somewhat responsible as a parent to ensure that your children are not availing themselves to this kind of stuff? No more. I mean, the same way you teach your children at a young age how to recognize and deal with strangers, right, that might approach them. I remember that when I was a kid.
But the problem you run into with at least a portion of the population is that the parents are just as addicted to their screens as the kids are. So as a way to have screen time for the parents, they just put the screen in front of the kid, and that's their enrichment for the day.
Yeah. And that's right. Here, go away. Go do that, right? It's laziness, what it is. Be a parent. I mean,
it's nothing new to this generation. Previous generations had parents that would sit and watch their shows.
That's true.
And completely ignore the kids.
That's just
right. The kids didn't have access to all the world's information and have potentially violent or perverse people gaining access to them.
I think that's what's different. But, geez, how many times have you been in a store or just in public where you've seen a child just misbehaving, and you want to say to the parents, hey, will you go discipline your child? Like, they're just in la-la land when that's going on. Leslie in Grenada says, appreciate you telling me this, Leslie. I go to Bishop Tipton's church in Grenada. He sang last night as well. It was excellent. Coming right back in the Element Well studio.
From the Seabrook.
Properly set all controls before recording.
All systems go.
The talk that keeps Mississippi talking. Middays with Gerard Gibert on SuperTalk Mississippi.
We're back with you in the Element Wealth studio on the C Spire text line. We were talking about the post office raising the price of a forever stamp, 82 cents, coming up later this month. This on the C Spire text line from someone who says they've been in the Postal Service 34 years. When Postmaster General gets a $305,000 bonus, no wonder post office is in the shape it is, and he's just one of many. Too many chiefs doing nothing, I know firsthand. Well, the first thing I guess I would say is I did review it. The salary for the Postmaster General, shockingly, is $35,781. But the overall compensation with bonus comes in at about $300,000. $300,000 to run a $90 billion company? I don't see how they get anybody to do it for that amount of money, given the headaches and the stress that such a job would place on a person, because if somebody that's qualified for a job like that could make way, way, way more money elsewhere. So that's hardly the reason that the thing lost $9 billion last year. I really can't argue about the org chart. You're probably right that it's evolved through the years. It's gotten stale. It's inefficient. It could stand some improvement.
What did you say the base salary was?
What I'm looking at says it's $35,000, the report I'm looking at. The base salary. What do you see?
I'm saying the base salary is just south of $350,000 a year.
I'm looking at $35,000, but the overall package is south of $350,000. But that includes base salary plus bonus. There may be some conflicting information, but I think overall it comes in at about the same number that what you're seeing. Just how it's broken down between salary and bonus might be some conflict on that.
Yeah, Business Insider has a report about the Postmaster General being the second highest federal employee.
That's true.
Paid federal employee.
Yeah. And
they've got an example in 2021, Postmaster General DeJoy made a base salary of $305,681, and with performance bonuses, the total came to $480,000.
Okay, well, that's different than what I'm looking at, which is, believe it or not, the report that I first came across was from a hearing recently held in the Capitol, headed up by Senator Josh Hawley, who is absolutely a person that I wish would go away from the United States Senate. He's proven to be more of a big government socialist, anti-capitalist, anti-business senator, in my view. But still, that's a relatively small amount of money for such a position, and certainly in the overall scope of the size of the post office and the magnitude of that organization, which is pretty big. Again, I'm all for privatizing it, but I can assure you of this: if you were to privatize this $90 billion company, you're not getting a CEO for $300,000, $400,000. Not even close. Not even remotely close. But what you would probably have is a much more streamlined organization where you didn't have just a C-suite full of lieutenants. And I agree with this individual on the text line. That's probably a big problem. But I would also point this out, and that certainly we constantly always need to be looking at ways to cut frivolous, unnecessary expenses. But the truth is, even if you did that, the thing still loses billions of dollars. That's the point. You got to come up with more than that. Cut the CEO's pay in half. It still loses $9 billion. It's not even a rounding error. Get rid of all the C-suite people, whatever those are. I haven't looked at the org chart, the lieutenants, whatever they call them. I'm sure that amounts to some amount of money, but not $9 billion. It's not enough to offset that. It's just structurally flawed. Not enough money coming in to cover the cost of delivering the mail. We could privatize it, but, I bet the service level would change. A lot of the services now that are available, like there's been a suggestion to eliminate Saturday delivery as a way to cut costs. I find that to be a nice benefit, honestly, of postal service, though I don't have much need for the postal service certainly in my life. The way most of it, I think that I get in my mailbox is stuff I throw away, more so than stuff that I need. Used to be in the old days before
you got to remember, postal service runs the last mile for a lot of delivery services,
including Amazon. Amazon's taken over more of that. They figured out a way to do that cost effectively. But you're right. They do a lot of last mile delivery for a lot of sort of big bulk type delivery services. They just don't go to the final destination, the residents on the street. Post office is good at that. They throw that. They would tell you that's actually in their best interest financially. That it's kind of they've got the fixed costs associated with going in those neighborhoods to those addresses no matter what. So just throwing an extra package in there really doesn't significantly increase their cost, I should say. So I haven't done any analysis on that, but I've seen certainly the reports on that. But yeah, 82 cents, that's the big news coming up here pretty soon. Amazon killed the post office. We deliver a 50-pound bag of dog food for the same price as a pack of socks, says Jason in Tupelo. Yeah, that's because there are some quirks in the law, as you know, Rhino, that actually compel the post office to provide that service. And that may be the case. I can see where you're right. Big bulk items like that probably are more costly. But, you'd have to do a thorough analysis of all the items that they deliver to really understand, is this costing money or is this actually reducing overall cost or capitalizing on fixed cost? But let's be honest, even before Amazon the last mile, the thing was in bad shape financially. So this didn't just happen this year.
Yeah, I mean, the email had been around for a minute before Amazon started shipping packages straight to your door.
That's right. And think about just the standard letter-sized deliveries that would have bills in them. And how many people now opt for paperless. And, in fact, many people do because the parties that are producing the invoices give you a break if you opt for paperless billing because it saves them money. So
they get to go tell the greenies, look, we're saving the planet.
That's absolutely true. And they do. They report that happily in their annual reports. So that's changed that situation quite a bit. And the same for remittance payment, which can all be done electronically now. So think about the volume of mail that eliminated. Just thinking through that transaction cycle, that process of sending the bill, you opening it, writing a check, putting it in an envelope, and then sending it back, sending the remittance in. So much of that has been replaced with a complete automation of that process. Postal service as is will never make it, says Brian. I think you're right. Mose, Gerard, our rural post office delivers on Sunday. I've seen that as well, Mose. You're right about that. And again, I think, Rhino, that's largely driven by the last mile contracts that they have. Because that's normally what I see a lot of on Sunday, or these last mile deliveries from the various online retailers. And another reason, this is Paula Meridian, the post office always shows in the red is because they are the only government agency that has to pay their retirement up front. It's true, Paul, but if you recast those numbers, because that is in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles, but if you recast those numbers, they're still in the red. I've seen some analysis on that. It doesn't really matter. Bottom line is there ain't enough money coming in, just like Social Security, just like PERS, to cover the benefits going out over a long-term basis. And so they do have to account for that in their financial statements. But data centers store the coupons to be sent out, correct, says Jason in Starkville. I guess that's true there, Jason. And so do data centers power all of that electronic billing and electronic remittance. That's absolutely true. So to those who are concerned about the environmental impact of data centers, they could take some consolation in knowing that we're saving the trees and the planet, right, by using data centers for all this electronic transaction business. We're coming right back in the Element Well studio.
Polyupa, Mississippi.
Check it out. Let's do this. The talk that keeps Mississippi talking. Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Let's get on with it.
On SuperTalk, Mississippi.
We are back with you in the Element Well studio. So, you and I have talked a fair amount on this program about nuclear power, and I think we both agree that this country should have been building nuclear power plants for quite some time, but they just essentially just stopped, went dark, stopped doing it from outcries from all the environmentalists and all kinds of
boils down to Jimmy Carter being a coward.
Yeah, that's absolutely
right. The man literally
right.
worked on nuclear subs, but he didn't have the backbone to tell the greenies in his own party to sit down and shut up about 3 Mile Island.
That's totally true. And as you know, even though the catastrophe at 3 Mile Island was certainly a problem, and
it was a problem that was contained by the safety measures we implement in America and around the world outside of Soviet Russia. But everybody points to Chernobyl as, oh, my goodness, that's what's going to happen. No, that's what happens when you cut corners and refuse to allow the people that actually know what's going on to talk to the people that actually need to know what's going on.
Yeah. It did get used. And I feel like a lot of that's the same case with all the folks that are complaining about the whole data center situation. Same deal. They're latching on to pieces of information and isolated examples that have way more other factors driving them than data centers. But they've attached those issues to data centers, associated with it, and then they run with that narrative. But where I was going was, I guess I didn't realize that last year the Trump administration set a goal to see 3 new micro reactors achieve criticality.
Just basically means get them up and running.
Yeah, exactly. Be in production before the 250th birthday of the country, which just occurred last Saturday. It turns out 4 made it. The goal was 3. So you know this. You're shaking your head. 4 were achieved. I got this through one of my subscriptions of MIT Technology Review. Just reported on it today. So 4 companies. Now, this is a positive sign for nuclear technologies when we're facing a period where we need more electricity. I just don't get the attitude, and this to me is more consistent with what we get out of Democrats. And not classical liberals, but modern day nutcase liberals, which is you just got to do without. Everything's do without. Never, okay, well, no, we want that. We need that. Let's figure out how to solve it. Let's put our human brains.
That's the key issue there. They don't want problems solved because they've developed a system using those problems for political leverage.
That's absolutely true. And they just... They incorporate that, I guess, into their basket of narratives.
That's why they went all in on wind and solar and blacklisted natural gas and nuclear, because wind and solar are big public projects that the people can see, and you can see how much I care about saving Mother Earth. Whereas nuclear is just a nondescript building. Natural gas is just over here doing its thing, being just as clean as it always has, even though they championed it a decade and a half ago. Now it's the evil boogeyman. Those aren't as flashy. They're not going to get near as much public attention, and you can't tug on the heartstrings of the idiotic Democratic voters and say, look, I saved Mother Earth.
Exactly. So there is the city of Jackson is considering a 6-month moratorium on data centers. I have no idea what that's going to achieve. I think it's dumb.
It's going to give them 6 months to cook up some asinine formula or policy or position that allows them to enrich themselves, their friends, and their family at the taxpayers' expense.
Probably. Well, I feel like they just put a big sign on the city that says close for business. So there's an individual, I'm looking at this on social media, that says if you want proof of what data centers do to energy prices, look at New Jersey with its allowance of data centers and how much that has affected the price of electricity. But you're seeing this now. In those areas where electricity has risen, and they're attributing that to data centers, but that's happened recently. You know what that is? It's the Green New Deal policies of Biden that got reversed and got repealed when this president took office. But all these crazy virtuous companies and organizations that generate power or the various users of power have all leaned hard into all those policies because the federal government was subsidizing it. And now that's off the table, and they got to figure out another way to pay for all the stupid Green New Deal investments. Why isn't that getting talked about more? That's exactly what's happening. It's not data centers. It's your Green New Deal crap. Fox News SuperTalk News is coming up next.
And now, another hour of the talk that keeps Mississippi talking. Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Begin your transition now.
Now on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Hour 3, the afternoon portion of Middays from the Element Wealth Studio on this
Friday Eve.
We welcome now Josh Maples, agricultural economist with the Mississippi State University Extension Service. Hey, Josh, thanks for coming on.
Hey, Gerard, thank you.
You bet. So we wanted to talk to you today about all these reports we're seeing about the new World Screwworm and what sort of impact it might be making right here in the state of Mississippi. Of course, as you know, the agricultural industry is the state's largest. It's very critical to our economy, to jobs, et cetera. And, of course, it's critical to the nation and the world's supply of food and fiber and other commodities that our farms produce. What's this thing doing?
Yeah, it's a really big deal that thankfully we're not having to deal with in Mississippi yet, and hopefully we never have to. But from a animal production standpoint, from a pet standpoint, especially from a wildlife standpoint, you know, if we're ever in a situation where we're dealing with the screwworm in Mississippi, it's really problematic, adds a lot of cost, and can cause a lot of damage. So right now it's in Texas primarily. The first case was found in June 3rd, or confirmed June 3rd. So we've had about a little over 30 cases in the U.S. so far. And really hoping that it doesn't get to Mississippi. But it's something we got to all kind of be thinking about and be cautious and be vigilant about trying to detect.
Well, I know that your specialty is the economic aspect of agriculture, but the obvious question is, what the heck is this, and where did it come from? I've never heard of a screwworm before. I dare say most of our audience probably hasn't. This seems to be new. I saw the same report. First place that apparently it surfaced was in Texas.
Yeah, so the screwworm, the easiest way to think about it, it really looks pretty similar to a housefly. If you think about the common housefly, you may have seen at some point, you left some trash out or something, and you find some maggots on the trash, and so the flies lay the eggs on something decaying, and then that becomes maggots. And screwworm is kind of similar, but the key difference here is that the screwworm larvae, they feed on living flesh. So that's what makes it unique.
Okay. And
so whenever that fly is flying around looking for somewhere to lay her eggs, she's looking for an open wound. And when she lays those eggs on an open wound and they hatch, the larvae, they kind of look like screws, and they screw their way into living flesh and cause all kind of problems, and can ultimately, if they're not caught and detected and treated, which there are treatments, but if it's not caught and detected and treated, then it can kill the animal eventually, because it just creates a bigger and bigger wound, and then you worry about secondary infections. So it can be a big mess, and it's new to us right now, but this is something that we had big problems with in the U.S. in the 30s, 40s, 50s, and even 60s before eradicating it. So it's kind of a return of an old pest that we're trying to be vigilant about now.
Okay. So just to understand, crops aren't exposed. They're not at risk, right? We're talking about something that just goes after animals. So I assume that means cattle, pigs, hogs, chickens, etc.
Yep, that, and then also house pets, dogs and cats, and anything that with living flesh.
Interesting.
People, it's pretty rare because you pay attention to yourself. It's pretty rare for people to have to deal with it, but it's mainly an animal thing that we're concerned about. Cattle, especially, is getting a lot of attention.
Okay. Well, how does a farmer know that their cattle, for example, are being invaded by these screwworms, and then what do they do about it?
Yeah, so there's a lot of effort to detect right now. So there's traps out looking for flies, but really people dealing with livestock is kind of the front lines. So producers, people also dealing with their dogs and cats. If you see a cut or an open wound on your animals, it looks like it's got maggots or something in it. That's something you need to tell your vet about. And so it takes cattle producers, for example, you have to pay a lot more attention to your cattle. You got to be looking at them pretty frequently, to try to detect this, and then try to treat it. And then there's also this sterile fly technique, which I think is one of the most fascinating things about how you broadly try to prevent this. Is if you think about the life cycle of a screwworm, the female in particular, because that's the one that lays the eggs, it's about 21 days, can be a bit longer. But the way that we try to prevent this and the way we eradicated this back, decades ago, is we're producing about 100 million sterile male flies every week at a facility in Panama. And they literally dump these things out of airplanes. It's not the only way they do it, but they are releasing these sterile male flies to try to overwhelm the population of female flies. So if the female, she mates one time. If she mates with a sterile male, nothing happens, right? There's no eggs, and she dies, and you can tamp this down. So the challenge, 100 million sounds like a lot, but we need more than that to be able to knock this back.
So I guess it's fair to say you're sort of fighting nature with nature in that respect.
Exactly. It's fascinating. It's a technique scientists figured out, back 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s as they were working through this. And there's, latest estimates are we need 400 to 500 million sterile flies to really combat this per week. And so there's, new production facilities coming online, but it just takes time to build those things. And we had this thing, Gerard, pushed down into Panama. And if you think about just the geography of of Mexico, and then down as you get into Central America. The further south you can push it, the smaller the area that you have to release these flies over.
Makes sense.
Now that it's broken through that, it's gotten further north, and so we just got a bigger area, so we need more flies to cover that area.
Okay. Well, when's the last time in this country we had to deal with this problem, this screwworm problem?
Yeah, it was really the 60s, 50s, 60s, had some, reoccurrence in the 70s. We had a most recent case in the 2000s was in the deer in Key West, had isolated cases there that we were able to combat pretty quickly.
Okay.
But, broadly from a livestock and pet, and wildlife is a key one, because if you think about wildlife, out of the 30 plus cases that we've identified so far, none of those have been wildlife. It's all been livestock, sheep, goats, cattle, dogs. But, there's not a lot of people in the woods right now for wildlife. It's just not, but as they get into the woods for hunting season, hunters will be a front line for this too, to try to pay attention to see if they catch anything. And if they do, they need to turn that in, because there's an incentive here to detect, because if you detect, then you can come in with the sterile male flies and try to stop it, and try to overwhelm that particular area where there is a fly. So it's key for people to detect, to be vigilant about it, so that we can use the other tools that we have as well.
Okay. I remember, was it in the 80s, I think, maybe early 90s, the time escapes me, in Kern County, California, you had was it the Mediterranean fruit fly or something to that effect? It was just really devastating. In that county, it's an agricultural county, lots of fruits and vegetables grown in that county. Of course, that was a crop-eating pest, right?
That's right. And actually one of the facilities in Mexico that is currently being converted to a screwworm, sterile male screwworm fly facility, is a fruit fly facility. And so they're trying to convert it over. That would get us an extra 60 to 100 million head or I shouldn't say head, I'm thinking in cow terms, 60 to 100 million flies per week.
It's incredible.
Hopefully that'll be online this year. It's fascinating, isn't it?
That's just incredible. And some brilliant folks that came up with the idea. And my guess is it's probably because they looked at all the other options and said, it's not like we can just go spray, or apply some sort of protection product, chemical, and deal with this. And whatever the chemical is they came up with probably would do more harm to the environment, which would not be smart. So this is incredible. It's brilliant. I appreciate you coming on. Enjoy the conversation and appreciate the insight. We would have never known without that. So hopefully these things will stay out of the state of Mississippi. And by the way, Josh, can the folks call the MSU Extension Service, farmers in particular, if they have this issue, to find out more?
Absolutely. We've got some info up. Mississippi Board of Animal Health is also a great resource, but here at Extension, we're always happy to help producers, consumers, whoever.
Okay. And pet owners need to be looking out for open wounds on their pets, and if they see something crawling around in there, call their vet, right?
Yeah, call their vet, and their vet is in line to report it up, so absolutely.
Appreciate it, Josh. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you all.
For coming right back in the Element Well studio.
Nowadays, get on! Middays with Gerard Gibert. It is on SuperTalk, Mississippi. We're back with you in the Element Well studio, and that fascinating discussion. Really appreciate Josh Maples for coming on and explaining all that, clarifying it. I got to tell you, I didn't know until he explained it that we use sterile species of the same species, I should say,
Yeah, pretty much any bug you're trying to get rid of, that's the go-to, because it's a little bit more labor-intensive on the front end with the whole growing and manufacturing of the sterile insects, but then you're just flying over wherever region or area you need to distribute them and pumping them out.
Yeah.
Compared to the logistics involved in finding a human or pet or plant-safe chemical, pesticide, insecticide, whatever you want to call it, to be used on the invasive species. Then you got to find a safe way to actually apply it, and then you got to make sure that nothing gets run off, and then you got to make sure everything's safe after it's been applied. So it's a lot more of a headache to try to do it chemically than it is to do it biologically. And you've seen it with the screwworm, you've seen it with the medfly, like you were talking about, you've seen it with West Nile and mosquitoes.
That's right. Yeah, it's fascinating though. I mean, it really is. I was just telling you offline. It just seems weird that you're in the business of growing flies, I guess, producing flies. That's weird, but has a very necessary purpose, both commercially and to protect our food supply. Makes total sense. But I do remember the medfly of the 80s in California, and I remember there were certain products that were affected because it devastated much of the crop. Just weren't available in the stores. You couldn't get avocados for a while. Remember that. Just weird.
And like everything else, there's been a ton of internet rumors about the origins of the screwworm and how it's making a resurgence and pushing back north. But if you dig into it and read what the people, like our last guest, that work in the industry are talking about, it's kind of a snowballing cacophony of errors.
Yeah.
Where you had a major supply chain disruption during COVID, because everything had a major supply chain disruption, and that included the sterile flies, the production of or the distribution of. So that slowed down the constant battle to keep the screwworms pushed south, because before COVID, the screwworms were pushed south of what's called the Darien Gap, which is a wilderness of jungle and inhospitable area that is usually occupied by terrorist or rebel groups from Central or South America, because it's really hard to go in there and root them out. But because it's such a wild land, it's also a corridor for migrants coming from South America into Central America and North America. So you had the screwworm getting a foothold due to the lack of supplies in the battle against them. Then you have literally millions upon millions of migrants after COVID up to this point, up to the last year or so, moving through the Darien Gap from South America into Central and North America. It's a pretty long trip. You can't really stop in the Darien Gap for a Big Mac, so you're bringing livestock with you to feed yourselves through the Darien Gap. Well, those livestock are now carrying it. All these people, long journey, open wounds, sleeping outdoors, likely carrying it, so it just gets marched farther and farther north as millions of migrants move north.
That's, I think, an excellent analysis, and certainly I'm going to call it a theory just because there's no just concrete evidence to that effect, but I think it's a very plausible theory and likely why we're experiencing what we're experiencing with this.
Oh, yeah, because the experts are still looking for, I guess, what would be called a patient zero or whatever.
Yeah, but exactly.
In the meantime, they've put together all the facts, and this is the idea they've come up with. Well, it had to have been this, this, and this.
Okay. Yeah, it kind of sounds like the wet market theory with COVID, right? Which is the narrative we were all expected to believe for quite some time. So we were talking earlier about the prospect of legalizing mobile sports betting in the state of Mississippi. The lieutenant governor has indicated he is not in favor of that, although the Speaker of the House is, and legislation has passed the House and failed to pass the Senate in the past, I think for the last 2 years. And on the C Spire text line, I know 20 people right now who bet in Mississippi on their phones. We might as well make it legal and get the tax dollars. Man, it's way more than 20, but I get it. This individual knows 20.
Well, then it all comes down to the legal definition of betting and sports betting. Because from everything I understand about the whole conversation, prediction markets have pretty much been the end around on mobile sports betting.
That's true.
You can legally take part in prediction markets across the country, whether or not your locality has legalized mobile sports betting.
There is a loophole. I agree.
I can literally pull up on my phone right now and put $1 on France beating Morocco right now.
Somehow I got on my email address, got on Polymarket's list, and I get the daily Polymarket email showing all the various bets that are available or predictions that are available, I guess is what we call them. Yeah, okay, is that what you call them? Yeah. And it shows you the percentage if you want this or that, yes or no, whatever, on that decision. So interesting. Darren in Jackson says, so if I can only support my addiction and suicide tendencies at a casino but not at home, got it. That's pretty much it. You know, I disagree with the lieutenant governor here. I don't think it's government's responsibility to I guess, intervene in this way.
But it is a perfect example of government being behind the 8 ball and too slow to get anything actually accomplished that benefits anybody. Because, well, we can't have mobile sports betting. We can't have those tax dollars voluntarily given by the people participating. So the market itself decides, you know what, we're going to figure something else out.
Exactly right.
And completely ignore whatever y'all have been talking about for forever.
And so that's exactly what's happening, is that as one of our texters pointed out that says, I know 20 people, and you know that just about everybody listening could probably name 20 people that they know. It's very popular with the young people. And then you know about folks that get close to the border or just cross the border into Tennessee, Louisiana, boom, and do it. Kind of like the pre-lottery days when folks around this part of the state would just head over to Louisiana, just over the bridge there, and at the closest convenience store, the retailer, and buy lottery tickets, especially when the Powerball and Mega Millions were way on up there. So, yeah, I don't think the fact that we don't authorize it and legalize it, I don't think that means that that's going to prevent it from happening. That's clearly not the case. So I agree. I think we're missing out on revenue, and not to mention that there are just a lot of people that enjoy it. And look, before we had electronic sports betting, I personally never did, but I just know tons of friends, even when I was in college. You know, we had somebody in the fraternity that was like the contact for the bookie, and you could just bet. Now, that was just all done on landline telephones
Just
then.
look for the guy at the end of the bar with the gold ring full of diamonds.
Yeah, exactly.
Go ask him if he knows who's going to win tonight's game. Huh.
So, I disagree with the lieutenant governor's stance on that, and I'm not sure what's driving that. I don't think we're really protecting anybody, as he would suggest, by not pushing that into law. Maybe there's some deference to the casinos, although that's kind of split. And the reason is because, so you'll know, legislation
because
in the past,
they allowed the casinos to have too big of a part of the conversation when they legalized sports betting at casinos.
That's absolutely
because they were
true.
too slow to pull the trigger, too afraid to actually allow the people of Mississippi to make their own minds up about what they do with their own money, that they made it this convoluted system of, well, yeah, you can do it. You can spend your money on what you want to spend it on, but you got to go to this place and only this place.
But, you know, the measures...
Forcing those places to invest in it, and now those places would be upset that they made an investment that they don't get to use as much.
The measures would require the sports betting platforms to associate and partner with a casino, so the revenues would still flow through the casino, and the taxes would still be remitted by the casinos, just like they do now on the gaming tax. But there were some in the legislature, in the House in particular, that got upset by the fact that the law would, or the bill, I should say, would allow those platforms to negotiate independently. It doesn't like distribute it and allocate it. There wasn't any DEI provision. That's what they got mad about.
Once again, more elected officials thinking they know what to do with your money better than you do.
Exactly. Coming right back.
From the Seabrook.
Come on. Middays with Gerard Gibert.
All right, we are back
on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
I haven't checked it out lately, but you remember, Rhino, when you and I on this show, when North Carolina, when they legalized mobile sports betting, and like in the first month, it just blew away the revenues that went to the state, just blew away all the predictions. I mean, we were astonished. I mean, I don't remember the number, but it was incredible, way higher than what was expected. And I felt like, well, after the novelty wears off, it'll normalize and come down. But I bet it's still producing a big chunk of money.
Yeah, I'm looking at, let's see, it launched in March 2024, so up to March of 2026 for a nice round number. They've taken in $250 million in revenue.
Okay. To the state.
To the state.
Yeah.
If you bring it up to today, they've had another $50 million since March, so they're over $300 million in revenue to the state since March 2024.
Okay, so $150 million a year. I don't know. That's real money.
On about $1.5 billion in gross wagering.
Okay. Well, the state of North Carolina is what, 4 or 5 million people, 5 million, 6 million people, thinking about the metro areas there that pop it up.
11.2 million.
Okay, that's much bigger than I thought. My apologies. I didn't know that. Now, that is a state that's been growing a lot, and a good reason for its growth, Research Triangle Park, RTP. If you guys aren't familiar with that, it's kind of a Silicon Valley East. I want to say really got its footing in the 90s. I remember I was in the industry. IBM, Cisco Systems have huge operations there, but as is always the case in the technology industry, that just became a magnet for lots of other big technology companies that moved into the Raleigh-Durham area there. And so that has been a lot. Of course, Bank of America, I want to say, still headquartered there in Charlotte. Big financial mecca is Charlotte, North Carolina. But, all right, 11 million people. So let's just say that in the state of Mississippi, it's estimated it would generate about $20 million a year. But that's still useful money in a $7.34 billion budget.
That is not revenue that you had to gain from raising taxes on anything else.
Yeah, and I also
completely voluntary tax dollars.
The lottery, similar in that respect. There were folks in the legislature, as you know, that opposed that. Ultimately, got passed. Sold the first lottery ticket in 2019, November of 2019, and the system has been up and running since then. By the way, looked at the inception to date figures. The Mississippi Lottery Corporation has produced about $820 million of net proceeds for the state of Mississippi since it's been inception. And to your point, all voluntary. Just completed the fiscal year. Of course, it coincides with the state's fiscal year, June 30th. And the corporation produced over $500 million of gross revenue. Haven't seen the final figures, but just looking at the latest data, they're probably going to come in at $127 million to the state net proceeds. Essentially, that's the profit the corporation makes on that $500 million of gross ticket sales That is the second biggest year in the corporation's history measured by the amount transferred to the state. So that's a good thing. That's been nothing but good. The first $80 million, just a reminder of net proceeds in a year, go to the state highway fund, the excess to the education enhancement fund, and that is a special fund, not the general fund, established by law, I don't remember when, many years ago. And it's mostly, if you review the pages of that law, it's a bunch of formulas for how the money gets divvied up, essentially. But it's called Education Enhancement Fund because it doesn't pay for traditional education, core education expenses. The general fund does that. That's mainly salaries, honestly. But those monies are distributed to K through 12 community colleges and higher ed in accordance with the various formulas used for the Early Learning Collaborative, school supplies, stadiums, physical fixed assets, that'd be buildings and HVAC systems, lighting, and so forth. And there's some other uses as well. They escape me, but that's why it's called the Enhancement Fund. It's kind of all the other things that are separate from just the core costs associated with delivering education. So I don't see how you could look at that and not say that hasn't been a good thing for the state of Mississippi. I believe it has. So on the C Spire text line, we had somebody earlier that was talking about, I think a big part of the water consumption issue, talking about data centers and consuming water, is also where they're consuming. They are building in areas where the level of consumption is unprecedented. In aggregate, it's not as big an issue as it is a low percentage of total consumption, but in relation to that area, it's unbelievable scale. That's true, except flushing toilets uses more. Watering golf courses that are in those same areas. And I'm a golfer, but the desert is absolutely jammed up with golf courses that do use water. And there's also lots of agriculture in those areas as well, in these deserts that don't get a lot of water. So I agree, but you got to be practical in this. But it's not true to say that the complaints are only coming from those areas. They're coming from right here. My gosh, we have more water than we can ever use. We're blessed with that. And guess what? It rains a lot here. And last time I checked, that water that comes out of the sky evaporates back into the sky and then comes back on us. So, but I think it's fair to point out that the total consumption is, a teeny tiny fraction. Data centers as a ratio of total water consumption. And even globally, I checked that out the other day and was just fascinated by the fact that all the data I could find points to just under a quadrillion gallons a year are used. Quadrillion! Globally. Data centers represent about 250 million of that. A fraction.
That's why I used the example weeks ago now of Olympic-sized swimming pools. Because you start talking about millions and billions and trillions and quadrillions of gallons of water, it's really hard to wrap your head around, even numbers. If you're good with big numbers. But you look at an Olympic-sized swimming pool, and it's been a couple weeks, so I'm going to Google that real quick to get the exact gallons. But yeah, so Olympic-sized swimming pool can be anywhere from 500 to 600, 700,000 gallons.
Okay.
If you're looking at the daily usage of, say, AWS, when they're actually using water, they're using less than an Olympic-sized swimming pool compared to the usage in the area being somewhere in the neighborhood of thousands of Olympic-sized swimming pools just in the area.
Wow. I hadn't heard that, but that makes sense. Well, again, in the country, according to the U.S. Geological Survey, data centers use 17.5 billion gallons of the total 120 trillion that we use. So if you're doing the math on that, that's 0.0017%, roughly. 0.0017%. In the state of Mississippi, by the way, we consume, and depending on what report, somewhere between 80 and 90 billion gallons. And that makes sense because it's less than 1% of total national consumption. And I would say based on our population, but having a good bit of agriculture, that sounds reasonable to me. And that's what the U.S. Geological Survey says, by the way. I'm not making this up. I wouldn't even know how to make up something like that. But it turns out that calculation works out to be about the same. It's slightly more as a percentage, talking about the amount of water expected to be used by data centers. It's way less than 1% is the point of the total water in the state. And by the way, it's wastewater. So that's another issue that needs to be, or another aspect of it that needs to be considered. So,
well, to make it even smaller, to get even more granular, instead of Olympic-sized swimming pools, just think of it in terms of gallons of milk.
Yeah.
If you've got a tractor trailer full of the brim with gallons of milk, you're looking at 5,000 gallons of milk. Would you really be missing milk if you took 5 to 7 of those out? That's what we're talking about here.
Yeah, I think that's a good analogy.
Full of gallons of milk, and you took 5 gallons out.
I think that's a good analogy. I was talking earlier about my experience last night. Always great with the United Pentecostal Church, their annual camp meeting, and I just said it's just so refreshing to see all the children dressed up, proper attire, I think, for worship service. George in Greenwood says, wearing respectable attire conveys respect for the people you will be around. Appreciate that, George. Coming right back.
Discover Jackson's Mississippi.
Middays with Gerard Gibert.
What? This is so
awesome. On SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Tall, could have used a few pounds. Tight pants points, hollering down.
Welcome back. Final segment, middays. On this Friday Eve, as Rhino says, Keith in Vaden says, tell Rhino to calm down. I'm all out of blood pressure pills. That's good for your blood pressure to let it out. I hear you. Hell, are there any data centers even considering setting up inside of Jackson? Laugh out loud on the 601. There are. That's what the whole debate is about. There's a company that wants to make an investment right now on a parcel that would not be problematic, would generate an enormous amount of revenue for a city that's broke. Again, I guess these are people that just want to stay poor, stay in shambles. Stay dilapidated. Perpetuate the crime. The blight. That's exactly what you're doing, because the only way you're going to fix that is with these sorts of investments. The only way. You can go add more people and change people in the city government all day long. But if you tie their hands and don't let them bring business in, and you raise a big sign that says, we're not open here, well, then you're going to stay like you are, which ain't very good. Man, I don't see how that's not just obvious. You ride through the city, you've seen it, you do it. There are more buildings and structures that are closed down, shuttered, falling apart, overgrown, than there are occupied. It sure seems like it. Man. With respect to someone saying that Lieutenant Governor just showing deference to the casinos, I got to tell you, I was in the gallery, was it 2 years ago, 3 years ago? First time that Representative Casey Urey introduced legislation to authorize sports betting, mobile sports betting in the state. I happened to be sitting right next to the current president of the Beau Rivage, and I asked him what he thought about it. Just casual conversation. He was supportive. Because remember, he liked the idea of going to compete to be a casino participating with the mobile sports platform. He saw the additional revenue. They were supporting it. The problem is there were some of the casinos that felt like, well, we don't want to compete. And that's when, you remember, Representative Robert Johnson, the Democrat minority leader, stood up and said, there's got to be a way that we can force these platforms to sort of equally distribute these contracts, right? Remember that? Like, no, that's just interfering with the market. That, by the way, is socialism. That's central planning socialism. That is a blatant example of it right there. And so the whole thing fell apart, bottom line. I think we got to get it done. I really do. Ben from Madison says, so the lottery will likely result in over $1 billion in less than 10 years without raising taxes. Yeah, that was a major W. I agree with you, Ben, and keep in mind that there are some still sitting in the legislature, some not. You remember Speaker of the House, Philip Gunn, at the time. He was not a fan. He didn't want to do this. In fact, he dismissed the prospect of this program really producing any meaningful amount of money for the state. He was wrong. Here it is. I'm looking, by the way, Ben, at the official data from the Mississippi Lottery Corp. Full disclosure, you guys probably know, I've served on the board since its inception in 2018. But, yeah, through fiscal year 26, that represents 7 years and 8 months because it launched in November. So we had 8-month fiscal year in 20. But, yeah, actually 6 years, 6 years and 8 months. It had some data for fiscal year 27, but that's just because we just got started. But, yeah, $810 million to the state over that 6.75 years. $3 billion of gross sales. That's pretty impressive. And certainly we didn't think that it would be this successful. It turns out to be about $122 million a year average net proceeds. The biggest year, no surprise, COVID. $137 million is what the lottery produced in fiscal year 21. That was half in 20, half in 21, right in the throes of the COVID era. So, I don't know, man. I think you got to be excited about the value this has produced for the state, but I think that we really need to get in gear and get the mobile sports betting thing passed. It's happening right now. We're leaking the revenue just as we were with the lottery. We were leaking lottery revenue before we legalized it. Let's get that done. Out of here today. Back with you again tomorrow. Stay safe and God bless.
A SuperTalk Mississippi media production.